Hi everyone, so today I'm going to talk about Olympus Workspace and then using batch files in Olympus Workspace. And all a batch file is really a way for you to save a bunch of different settings that you made through all of the different basic edits to a file that you can recall later and apply them to any other image that you've taken with your Olympus camera. And there's a few caveats to that and a few workarounds that you can apply these to images from just about any camera. But they work best with our Olympus cameras because that's what this software was made for. Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have this image here and I want to create edit this to be more of a punchy black and white image. So let's do that first, and then we'll save that as a batch file, and then we'll apply these same settings to other images. So if I want to make this a punchy black and white, all I do is I go into the basic edit tab here. This is the 3 ring circles, and I would just go into picture mode, and I'm sure many of you have done this many times, and I select monotone, and that should convert it nicely. And then to make it a little more punchier, I'm going to just apply a red filter, and then let's add a little bit of a purple tint because I like purple tints. And then the only other thing I might do is just dehaze it slightly. Let's give it about 30, like so. And yeah, I think that makes for a nice black and white image. Now, what I want to do is save this to a batch file so that I can apply these exact same settings to any other image. So let's do that. If you look right here, there's a little disk icon, and if I click on that, I can do Save Batch Processing File. And then it prompts me to save it to any folder I want, but it defaults to the picture folder, and that's just happened where I save mine anyway, because I don't really use the C drive pictures folder personally. So I'm going to just save it to this folder. As you can see, I have a lot of other presets I've been saving. And then in this next box here, I just have to give it a name. So we'll call this monotone with purple punch. We'll call it purple tint there. And if you look here, you'll see a list of the edits that we're going to be saving. So I'm going to be saving picture mode monotone with a red filter and purple tint applied. And I also applied a little bit of dehaze here in line 2. And then we'll just save it, just like that. And that's it. So let's go to another image here. Here's one of my girl dog Ellie. And let's say I want to apply that same processing that I did on the previous file. All I have to do is do Load Batch Processing File. So I click on the disk icon over here, and then I just scroll down to monotone with purple tint, just like so, and click OK. And that's it. That's all there is to creating, saving, and loading a batch file. Now there's a couple other things you can do. If there's a batch file that you use all the time or particular settings that you use all the time, you can save this into Olympus Workspace without having to load and reload these all the time. So all I have to do is there's 2 sets down here. There's set 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a set 1, 2, 3, 4 here on the right. Now these first 4 numbers here are saving the settings that you had. The 4 numbers on the right side here are recalling those things that you saved over here. So if I want to save this particular setting in Workspace so that every time I pull up Workspace it'll be right there for me, all I have to do is click over here, number 1 set, and then I'll just call this monotone with purple tint, just like so. And I'll save it. Now, that particular batch of settings are saved to number 1, and if I want to recall them, all I have to do is click on this number 1 over here. So let's go over to another raw file, and all I have to do is click the number 1 over here, and if I hold my mouse over, you'll see a little pop-up window to remind me what that batch setting was, and I'll just click that, and when I click on it, it shows me all the settings it'll do. And before I click paste, I just want to show you, you can, let's say I don't want to apply any dehazing, but I do want to do this monotone red and purple. I can just uncheck that, and now it'll paste everything but the ones that I unchecked. And we can do paste. And it should now apply those settings to this image, which it did. Like I said, you can do this up to 4 different settings over here. And that's all there is to loading and saving batch files, but there's a lot of caveats to this, because sometimes when you try to paste a particular number of settings or batch file to an image, you'll get a message something like this. You'll get this might pop up: edit settings were not applied to images with different formats. All right, because sometimes some settings are specific to the camera model and also specific to file types. So I can't simply apply these batch settings to a JPEG. If I created a batch file using an original ORF image, I can only apply that batch file back to the same kind of image and usually the same kind of camera or camera model. So a lot of times settings that I do with the Olympus Pen F are not going to work on settings that I use with the EM10 Mark II. However, it is possible to apply EM10 Mark II settings to Olympus Pen F settings, because the Pen F has some very JPEG-centric features in it that are not available in other cameras. And really the best way to think of it is Olympus Workspace is just a PC version of what we can already do in our cameras. So if your camera cannot do it in camera, any settings, you're not going to be able to do them in Workspace. And I'll see if I can show you an example here. If you look at this image now, over here, you'll see that the adjust colors icon is available. It's not grayed out. And that's because I took this with the EM1 Mark II. But let's say I pick an image, I think this one here. This image here I took with my pen PL8. And you'll notice that now the adjust color has been grayed out and all of the individual settings have been grayed out. So I'm not able to apply every batch setting to every kind of raw file. So just keep that in mind when you're creating them. I mean, most of us just have the one Olympus camera. I happen to have, several, so I've run into this problem maybe more often than some of you, but if you run into this problem, there is a workaround. And I'll do a different video for that, but basically all you do is you save your raw file as a TIFF file, and then you can apply, then open the TIFF file, then you can apply almost any batch file processing that you save to a TIFF file. So that's why if we look at all of the different batch files I've created, a lot of times I will say specifically in the batch file, like this one, Chrome Simple for ORF. So I know these are for any ORF system or raw file from Olympus cameras. But if you scroll down, if I scroll down and we look at this one says Kodachrome 64 for compatible raw files. So I know that this particular batch file that I save will only work with cameras that have compatible features, which in this case, for example, would be the adjust color, because adjust color is grayed out, and this batch file has a lot of color adjustments in it that I could not apply to this image. I mean, it still works and you can still apply it, but it's not giving you the full effect. All right, and one other thing I want to share with you, and this is something you should download from my website, is doing a full reset on the image. Because sometimes, and I'll take you to another image here, This image here is a raw file, but when I took the picture, I did a lot of settings, not the least of which I took this picture in black and white or monotone. And so that even though this is a raw file, it's showing me the black and white image with all of the settings that I did in camera. And if I make any changes, let's say I want to make this a color image. Let's do vivid, for example. So it's easy enough to convert it back, right? But this is your undo button, so you can go back and undo the last change. But there's one here that says revert to original. And if I click on this, you'll see that it takes me back to the original black and white image that I took in camera. This little back arrow does not reset the image to default settings. It actually resets it to the settings that you used when you took the picture in camera, in which case this was a black and white. So I've created a batch file that will reset everything back to zero, back to a full color raw image with all the default settings. And that's really the best place to start before you apply any other batch files. So let me show you what that will look like. So I'll go in and I'll do load batch processing file. And I've created it here, and it's on my website for you to download. It's free. And you can see, if you look at all of the settings here in the box here, you can see I put everything to zero. And I just click OK. And now this image has been reset all the way back to zero with natural colors and auto white balance. And now it's easy to apply. Let's try. Did I take this with the EM10? So let's try Eterna. And there, that's my Eterna simulation that I copied from Fujifilm. But if I tried to apply that Eterna profile potentially to an image that was black and white, it may not convert over from black and white to color. So that's why I always have a full reset, and that's the difference between doing this revert image here versus doing the full reset batch file that I created. But I think that about covers it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Also, again, check out my website for some more free presets. As I create them, I'll put them up there. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.